Hi, welcome to section 2. And so let's go ahead and start working inside of iClone. So this project file is the beginning project file that I have provided for you guys to download. So make sure that you check all the resources that are attached to this project. You should see the Matrix 2 iClone project file. So you will be able to download this. I have uploaded it for you. It's a part of this course. Please download this so that you can follow along. Okay, all right, because we're going to build from here. We're going to start from this project and we're going to build everything else. Okay, all right, let's get started. Okay, so right now when you open up this project, this is what you're going to see. Okay, just to kind of let you know what's going on. Before you change any of the camera movements, don't do anything yet because we have the cameras set to a very specific view, and so don't do anything yet, but you can push the play button to see what we have so far. So this is all we have. Okay, we have Neo and we have the 3 agents. Okay, and we also have a wall here, and the floor. Okay, now let's go ahead and switch cameras. To switch a camera, you're going to come up here to cameras, and we're going to, when you click on the camera, it's going to show you all the cameras that you have available in the scene right now. These are all the cameras that we've created. By default, iClone always comes with a preview camera and a switch. I'm going to show you how the switch works in a moment. And then these are the 2 cameras that we've created. Okay, so now we're going to switch to the preview camera because the preview camera is the camera that you use to basically look around in your scene, and it's the one camera that, it's the default camera, just to make it simple. The preview camera is the default camera, and the preview camera cannot be animated. Okay, so you can animate any other camera, but you cannot animate the preview camera. Okay, all right. And the switch, all this is, the switch is just a function that allows you to animate switches from camera to camera. Okay, I hardly ever use it, but it is necessary. It's a very good feature. We'll discuss this later in a moment. Okay, all right. So now that we are using the preview camera, let's walk around the scene to see what we have so far. So again, we have Neo. I've applied a standard animation here to Neo, and let's take a look at our agents. Okay, select the agents, and so we have some standard, a standard pose added here to the agent. Okay, so this is good. All right. So this is the beginning of the project, okay? And from here, we're going to build everything else. Like I said in the other video, Agent Smith and all the other agents have black hair. So if you're very particular and you want to change that, you can go ahead and change it. But this is what we're going to be recreating. Okay, perfect. All right, so this scene is very good. And again, when you're doing previs, you want to make sure you pay attention to the acting and the lighting. Very important that you do this accurately. Acting and timing, very important. So the very first scene is where he stands up. And you want to count the seconds. How long does it take a person to stand up? Probably half a second, right? So in this scene, we see him standing up. That took about maybe half a second, maybe 1 second. So that's the first scene that we want to animate. You want to look at the scene when we examine this scene, we have a background, we have a very narrow hallway, we have the camera. He's pretty much, we have the camera cutting off the lower end of his body, and we can see that from the elbow up to his head is what is in view of the camera. So we want to make sure that when we previs, we make it exactly like this. From the elbow up is what you're going to see in the frame, okay? And notice that Neo is not centered. He's not in the center of the screen. He's a little bit offset. He's a little bit offset to the left. So there's a lot of negative space here. There's a lot of space here, and because Neo is mostly to the left of the screen. Very important details, because when you're recreating something, you really want to make it accurate. So let's go back and take a look at our scene. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just select this board here, and I'm going to hide it. To show and hide objects, you just click on the object that you want to show and hide, and just click on the little eyeball, and you're going to hide it, just so that we can have some space. Okay, so now I have applied a little motion here, a little standing up motion, which you can find in your motions tab. And it's a generic motion that comes with iClone. You can download all of this. Let's click the down arrow, and let's just apply a male mix move motion. So any one of these motions that allows the character to stand up from a lower position, you want to go ahead and apply that. So I've already applied this for you, so that's what you see here. Okay, so again, we're not seeing all of his body. This is not how it shows. So to get started, let's go into our cameras. Let's click on camera 2. Let's see what camera that is. All right, so select camera 2, go to the scenes tab, and click the down arrow to show all of your cameras. Okay, so we have camera 2, camera 2, camera 2. Let's go to the modify tab, and let's look at the camera that we've selected, and let's push play. Let's see how this looks. Okay, so this is what we have right now. We have Neo in the frame. He's a little bit offset to the left. He's not in the center. Okay, and we see his body from the elbow up. Okay, is there a lot of space above his head? Should we have a lot of negative space above his head? Maybe, maybe not. We'll take a look at that. The main thing is where he sits and where he is positioned in the frame. And so let's take a look again at our reference video. Okay, so he stands up, and the standing up motion is very short. It's a very short motion. It should only be about a second long. Okay, so we can already see that this is too long, because the standing up motion should be very quick. It should be just 1 second. Boom, and then cut to Agent Smith. Okay, so this is where editing comes in. Okay, this is where editing comes in. So now we have camera 2 here, okay, because we created this camera already. And when you select this camera in your scenes tab, we're going to go to modify, and let's look at our cameras, because remember how I told you that when you're doing previs, the camera is everything. You have to make sure that you're writing down the cameras that you select. So when you select camera 2, okay, or whenever you create a new camera, to change the camera types and the lenses, okay, you would go to modify, and here you have film back. As you can see, without us changing anything, okay, without changing anything, the standard project that I've provided for you, I created this particular scene using a Super 16 millimeter, okay, a negative Super 16 millimeter. I like this camera. It's one of my favorite cameras to use. It's an old school camera, but I still like to use it. Usually in Hollywood, okay, most Hollywood movies are shot using the 35 millimeter TV projection. So if you want to go for the TV and the film look, usually most films that you see are shot using the 35 millimeter TV projection. This is a real camera. Like I said, iClone has real world cameras. All of these cameras, like the Arri Alexa, these are real cameras. The Canon, different Canon DSLRs. And so these are, you have a Nikon, you have a Red. So these are real world cameras. 35 millimeter TV projection and 70 millimeter. Okay. Very few films are shot using the 70 millimeter, but most films are shot using the 35 millimeter TV projection. So you can shoot all of your scenes using the 35 millimeter, or you can just click on each one to see which look you like. Okay. All right. So for now, we're just going to leave it at the Super 16. And when you select this, here's what you can do. Since we can't really see anything right now, we can play with this by changing the lens types. Okay, so we have the 20 millimeter, which is what it's set to right now. 35 millimeter brings it a little closer. Okay, 50 millimeter, 80, and so on. Okay, so we have it set to the 20 millimeter. Now keep in mind that whenever you change something in iClone, whenever you see something that highlights in green, anything that's green in iClone, that means you can animate that feature. So when you are switching through your different lens types, make sure that you remove the animation. Otherwise, you will animate the camera without knowing that you're animating the camera. Okay, so let's switch back to the 20 millimeter because that's what we had. Okay, so that's the end of this animation. Now, as you can see, we have currently the animation loop set from here to here. Okay, that means that this whole clip is still playing even though there's nothing moving. You don't want to do that. Okay, you want to only keep what you need. So for instance, if I was to render this right now, so let's say if we like this and we want to render this right now, you would go to render video, and usually most Hollywood films are shot with the 24 frame rate, 24 frames per second, but I'm going to leave it at 30, and I'm going to leave this at 720p. But whenever you're doing actual films, you want to try to export in 4K. So always go for 4K when you're actually making a high quality film. But if it's just for previs, then you can just do at least a 720p. Okay. All right. So once you have your video, you have your MP4. You can also export to AVI. So you have different formats. MP4 is usually the quickest. Okay. And again, you can set your frame rate here. I typically, I never shoot at 24 frames per second, even though that's what most Hollywood films are shot with. I always usually go for 30, or if it's a very fast scene with very fast animations and movements, then you definitely want to make sure you shoot in 60 frames per second whenever you're doing action scenes, because it'll just look much better. Okay. All right. So for now, we're just going to leave it at 30 frames per second because we don't have very fast action in this scene. Okay. All right. So once you have set your settings to render out your first scene, this is what you're going to do. We don't have any depth of field added to this, so let's leave that alone. And so here you want to say export range, not all. If you leave this on all, then it's going to basically export the entire timeline from start all the way to the end, which is so unnecessary because, again, what we're rendering out right now is only this. He stands up, that's all he does. The very first scene of our previs is Neo standing up. That's literally a 1 second scene. So since we know this, why would we render all of this? Even all of this here is not necessary. All of this is just a lot of space. So you're going to increase your render times by not setting the right range. So before you render, you always want to make sure that you calculate how much of the animation you need and render only that. So he stands up, boom, okay. So now we're going to stop it right here, and we're going to render just this. Okay, good. Now we're rendering all of this not because we're going to use this entire clip. That's why editing is important. So we render, you always shoot more than you need. Never shoot less than you need. It's the same thing when you're making a film in real life. You're going to shoot more footage than you actually need. And in editing, the power of editing is knowing what to remove. So editing is all about taking away from what you've shot. Okay, so this is what we've shot with our camera. Okay, so we shot this scene using a negative Super 16 camera. Okay, a 16mm camera. That's our lens. Okay, so when you send this over to a director and they like it and they say, what lens did you use? You're gonna say Super 16mm. Okay, and you're gonna say you used a 20mm. This is the film back, this is the lens. Okay, all right, so you want to make sure that you're always paying attention. Take very detailed notes of the cameras that you use. And if you use depth of field, if you add a depth of field effect, you want to make sure that you tell your directors what you're doing. Take notes of what you're doing. Very important. Okay, all right. Okay, so let's go ahead and render video, and MP4, 30 frames per second, 720p. You want to do the final render, range, and export. Before we export, let's do one more thing to make life a little easier for us. Now, since we are rendering just this scene, okay, whatever you don't see in the scene, it doesn't make any sense to keep it in the scene. Okay, so we have 3 agents just standing there doing nothing. Since the first scene will not include the agents, it makes sense to remove them temporarily. So we're gonna hide the agents. This is how you reduce render times. Remove from the scene whatever will not be seen in that scene. So now all you have is Neo standing up. Okay, so now we're going to switch back to camera 2, and let's bring back our wall, this wall here that we removed. Let's bring it back. So let's bring back that wall. Let's push play. Okay, there we go. So this is what we're rendering out. Okay, and if you decide that you want to, change anything, you can move the cameras. But for now, I'm just showing you how to quickly render scenes out. So now we have everything ready. Let's render. We're going to say export, and we're just going to call this scene 1. Okay, hit save, and now we wait. Okay, so it's exporting very quickly because we don't have a lot in this scene. Okay, great. So now when it's done, just click yes to play it. All right, great. So now we have Neo standing up. We have scene 1. Now let's take a look at what we have here. Okay. So this is how we previs. We previs step by step. scene 1. Okay, now here's what I like to do. I like to edit at the same time when I am animating. So after I animate a scene, I immediately go into the editing software and I start cutting it together. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up Shotcut. Okay, now in Shotcut, when you open up Shotcut, it's going to ask you to give your new project a name. So we're going to give this a name. We're just going to say Matrix Tutorial. Matrix Tutorial. Okay. And leave this on automatic. So now we're going to get started. To import your videos, to start editing, you're going to go to the playlist, click on playlist, and let's move this aside, and I'm just going to click and drag this into the playlist. Okay, so now we have this scene inside of the playlist and we're ready to start editing. Remember when I said that editing is about taking away? A good editor knows what to remove. A big mistake is to be too in love with what you've created to the point where you don't want to remove anything. So never fall too deeply in love with the videos that you've shot. You want to be brutal and you want to take away whatever isn't necessary. Don't get too excited and put everything in a scene. Filmmaking is about only doing what is necessary to tell the story. So since we already know that this is a 1-second scene, let's take a look at what we've made. Okay, so ours is too long. Ours is way too long. Okay, it needs to only be 1 second. So maybe we need to remove this beginning part and maybe only start it from here. So let's try that. So to cut your scene, you're just going to right click on the clip, split at playhead. Click that. And now we're going to select the first half and push the delete button. And now let's play and see. Okay. It's better, but not there yet. Okay. Another thing that we know we don't need is the end part. So the end part right here where he is, when he stands up, anything from this moment on we don't really need, right? So let's delete all of that. Split at playhead. We're going to click this half and we're going to remove it. So now let's see what we have. Okay. Okay. Let's see what happens if we delete this. And if you want to zoom in, just click and drag this to zoom in. And now I'm going to right click and split at playhead. And I'm going to delete that as well. So this is editing. This is how you make a film. You just keep taking away from what you rendered until you have something that's professional. All right. And there's this little part here at the end that I don't want. So I'm going to remove that little part. Zoom in a little bit more so you can see. Okay. Delete. And zoom back out. Now let's play. Okay, so that's about 1 second. Okay, it's a little bit over 1 second, but that's okay. So maybe we can remove that. So you can see how precise filmmaking has to be. Editing is about timing. Okay, so good. Now we have the beginning of our previs. Okay, there we go. So now we can save this. And now we're going to start working on section 2 of the next scene. So the next scene after he stands up. Cut to. Okay, so the agents are both facing the elevator. So we cut to this scene where the agents are facing the elevator, and only he turns around slowly. So that slow turn is about maybe 3 seconds, maybe 2 or 3 seconds. So we have to do a 3-second turn. And then we also have to create a camera that's going to zoom in on his face. And notice that he's angry. He has a very frowny face. He's not smiling. So the emotion is important too. Okay, so that's the next scene. The next scene is creating the slow turn and the camera zooming in on his face. All right, so stay tuned. That's going to be in the next video.